order the City of Iowa City Work Session for February 1st, 2022. Welcome to everyone that is here in person, as well as to anyone that is virtual. Our first item on the agenda, we're going to talk about the continuation of our meeting protocol discussions. And I might just invite our City Attorney, Eric Gores, to start that conversation for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to read both the memo and the draft set of rules. I thought I'd provide a little history of how we got to where we are now. There was a desire on the part of council to look at the rules and perhaps modernize them and put them all in one place. Most cities have a single set of rules to which members of the public and the council members and staff themselves can find most of the rules that pertain to the governance of city council and the procedures by which their meetings are run. Iowa City has traditionally not done it that way. We've had a large number of separate resolutions covering a broad array of topics, and they were kind of scattered hinder and yon, which I think we have concluded was not the best way of organizing those. And so I want to thank Kelly for doing quite a bit of legwork in kind of rounding up all those resolutions and putting them in one spot for me to go through and incorporate into the draft set of rules that you folks have been provided. So I took the kind of the resolutions that constitute the present set of rules governing city council and city council meetings. And then I also did some research gathering the single set of rules from a number of different metro cities, as well as template or examples of rules provided by the Iowa League of Cities, and then compared those to how Iowa City has traditionally run their meetings, understanding that every city is different and has kind of a different culture for how their meetings are run. Iowa City has long been known as being very welcoming of public comment and providing a lot of opportunity for that, for example. And I wanted to be true to that history, and so drafted the rules in order to reflect that emphasis within our community. Those rules were then reviewed at the staff level and then were provided to a subset of council members, including the mayor pro tem, and council member Weiner, and they provided their input, and so further refinements were made, and that has resulted in the rules that have been presented to you. Obviously, the rules are aimed at allowing for effective business meetings. This is your business meeting. There's any number of ways, of course, that all council members are receiving public input, for example, in all different kinds of settings and so forth. But this is ultimately the business meeting at which decisions are made by you. So the rules, like the rules of every other city, are geared toward having an effective and efficient meeting, while particularly in Iowa City's case, allowing for maximum public comment and allowing everyone to be heard, and so they have an opportunity to address you directly at the time that you folks are considering a vote one way or another on a given item. These are your rules, so there's no pride in authorship. If you folks would like to see changes, please don't be bashful in discussing those. I do have one suggested amendment after looking at it more carefully and comparing it to Robert's Rules, which who knew it was this thick? This is how thick Robert's Rules is. And that's in Rule 2. The last sentence in 2, I would recommend that we delete. The reason I suggest that is that Iowa City has long adopted Robert's Rules, and this sentence, that is, except as specifically required by these rules, council shall not use any formal points of parliamentary order, personal privilege, parliamentary inquiry, or other technical forms, might be construed as undermining the adoption of Robert's Rules. And so I would recommend that we delete that last sentence. But otherwise, I would turn it back over to the mayor to and invite your discussion and input.
Thank you, Eric. And I was one of the ones that was on the committee, and so was Mayor Pro Tem, as well as Councilor Weiner. So this is open discussion. I think the document is, has been shared not only with council but also to the public. So now I'll just open it up for discussion.
I mean, I would just open by saying I think I really appreciate all the work that you put into this, Eric, as well as you, Kelly. I think there are some refinements that still need to be made to Section 21 so that we're not impinging on freedom of speech, and so that we're not essentially encouraging people to take some actions. But I think, like, Council, I think you have some expertise in this area. I mean, I just basically want to make sure that we are abiding by, that we're but allowing people to have their First Amendment rights and not basically encouraging public displays that we may not be interested in by actually putting some of this language in here. And I'm thinking specifically of the first paragraph that Rule 21 that talks about slanderous or disruptive remarks, and then in the bullets, the first and second bullets in particular, I just think we need some refinement, and maybe a couple of others. I haven't come up with specific language, but maybe a couple of others have some specific suggestions. Otherwise, I think that it's really great to have it all in one place, so that people can know what the rules of the road are, and I think that's a huge service to council and to the public.
If I may, I want to make sure that we're all looking at the same version of rules. Perhaps I've got the wrong version. You had mentioned Rule 21. My version doesn't have bullet points on them. What's the title of the rule that you're referring to?
Sorry, it's Rule 21, and then I missed the Rule 22 because it comes at the bottom of the page. So the bullets are under Rule 22.
Okay, got it. All right, perfect.
Apology.
I would follow up in this way about the First Amendment rights. You're absolutely right about that. Most of the language, particularly in the second bullet point, is aspirational and obviously is ideal for a functioning governmental meeting where we invite constructive criticism, tough criticism, and so forth, but personal attacks and so forth are not particularly productive. That said, everyone at this dais is a public figure. And as a result, usually the First Amendment response to bad speech regarding a public figure is more speech. That is speech to the contrary, to rebut that. It would be different if it was just clearly and outrageously slanderous, if it was addressing an employee who isn't at this dais and isn't a public figure. But you're right. That is, if someone comes and wants to have a personal attack to a council member, I think they should probably know that's not a particularly productive exercise, but I agree with you. The First Amendment would probably entitle them to do so.
Yeah, if I could jump in. So I dusted off the old media law and First Amendment law from courses and coursework and things like that. So I could double check this. And yeah, as I was reading through this, it seems pretty clear that the things we want to do in terms of holding a meeting, like no disruptions, seem to be pretty allowable. At least when I was going back and looking through some of the textbooks and for some different court cases. But anything as it shies into the area of addressing content, I feel like that's a landmine. It's a real thing to kind of avoid. So I agree. Even though we wish people would not behave in a way that would maybe be slanderous or personal attacks and things like that, my reading on it, and of course I'm not the attorney, but my reading on it is we really can't legally do that. Like, we wouldn't have any legal grounds to stand on. But I think it's also ethical. I mean, that's, if we want to err on the side of open discussion. Now, that said, that doesn't mean anybody can say it at any point in time in a meeting. So, we do offer, I think, watching some of the meetings and some of the problems that sort of brought this about dealt with the fact that meetings were being disrupted and the off topic. That seems to be something that would be a reasonable, and because it is a dedicated forum, a public forum, so it's dedicated to a purpose, we do have, I think, the right to say, open public comments are this time to this time. Other speakers during, we're talking about a zoning issue. Speakers that speak to that need to be talking about that topic. All seem to be things that we can say, yes, that for the running of our meeting, that works. But I think we get into stuff like, some of the specifics of how we would like people to behave, which I agree, I'd like them to behave. I don't think we can codify that and make it stick. So, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts too as I go back and look through this.
I appreciate seeing all this material as well. I kind of wish I had seen it earlier, actually, just to understand what, how our meetings are held and what the options and possibilities are. In terms of specific comments under Rule 20, the time limit, based on my experience on the council, it seems I would like to distinguish time limits on, the public comment period and things of that sort. But when it comes to items that have a public hearing, it seems to me those 3 minutes may not be sufficient. And, I would prefer something along the lines of 5 minutes on those items that require a public hearing. So that would be, I think, my main focus. We talked about the bullet points. It does, one of them was on organized groups and, that can be creative in how they use their time. And I just wanted to note that, it can either be consolidating under one speaker or another option that we've seen is that an organized group will coordinate their presentations. So over 4 or 5 individuals will combine their time, and each of them will cover a different aspect of whatever the issue is before them. And I felt that worked very effectively and was very productive as well.
I wanted to point out for rule number 20 that it does go on to say persons limited to 3 minutes speaking time, and then after the comma, it says unless additional or less time is determined by the presiding officer, which will be the mayor in this situation, right now today, and is based on the number of persons wishing to speak and or the length of the council meeting. So it does allow for adjustments to be done. But I hear your specific request is time limits for public. Your specific request is for what again?
Public hearing, anything with a
hearing.
public hearing. And I must say I'm not quite sure exactly what requires a public hearing. Clearly, planning and zoning matters typically have public hearings. And it's that type of event or item that I'm most concerned with based on my own experience, that oftentimes those are discussions where the speakers, the public comment, is more likely to reasonably go over a 3-minute limit. And so I think, at least going into it, and I agree with you, there's a lot of discretion that the presiding officer has in terms of deciding what the time limit should be. But just as a general rule, it seems to me that those items that have a public, public hearing aspect to them may require more time than 3 minutes as a maximum.
I agree with Councillor Thomas on that in some instances, and in our experience in the 6 years we've been on there have been times when during the public hearing, it seemed as though there were folks that might have had a little bit more to say that could have had 5 minutes. I think 5 would be the max for them. If they had some type of session, if they had a visual presentation, we could extend the time limit for them. So I would agree with that in that respect for the public hearings. Of course, on your judgment, on the presiding officer's judgment too, if there's 20 people that want to talk 5 minutes, that would be quite a long time. So again, going back to your judgment on that. wanted a little, I appreciate all the work that you did, Eric, and those that worked on this, because I think it does help to provide some clarification as far as where we are, and that it is a business and that we want to run it smoothly and get our business done. So I thank you for that. Especially since a recent meeting that we attended, there wasn't anything in there clearly stating that the mayor pro tem or presiding officer can like temporarily put the meeting in recess. Does our group feel that we need to have that kind of language in there that allows the mayor pro tem or presiding officer to recess the meeting?
Would Robert Rules kind of address that?
Yeah, I mean, Robert's rules do allow for that. You certainly could add it, but you have the ability now by adopting Robert's rules.
Okay. Thank you. And kind of on the lines of that, too, Rule 26, let's see here. The call for a vote. Is that basically what you're saying is what I'm used to as calling the question? And would that, I mean, should we refer to it as that, or can it stay, can one council member, or would it take more than one to actually call the question then? Can we clarify that in there?
Yes, that is a different phrasing for calling the question, and yeah, I believe this is consistent with Robert's rules, what's spelled out here now. That's, as you're already, I'm sure, aware, if debates tends to drag on and become repetitive and circular, then a motion can be made to call the question, a second needs to be made, and then a majority of council needs to vote to call the question. That's not a vote on the merits of the underlying motion. So you would have two votes. Yes, we vote to call the question, and now we're going to vote on the underlying item.
Okay, thank you.
One other quick question. Is there, I probably should have said this before. Thank you to everybody that worked on this. Very much appreciate the time and effort that went into it. And to give us something that then we can hash over and have something concrete in front of us. It's an important part of the process, and I want to make sure I acknowledge that work is appreciated. With since the Robert's Rules updates periodically, would we have to, every time it updates, just go back and say, we are adopting the newest version, or would we want to phrase this to just follow whatever the latest? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I'd have to look at the ordinance again, but I believe that the ordinance that is codified that adopts Robert's rules, I believe it says as amended. That would certainly be the magic language that you're looking for, because you're right, it is. I mean, the book I'm carrying is the 12th edition, and it's, the newly revised. There was, of course, the revised version, and now the newly revised, and yeah, you're right.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I want to echo the thanks for everyone who worked on this. I do have a few kind of maybe more housekeeping, clerical kinds of things, and then a couple of substantive comments. There were a few places in the resolution where, like, council member is just inconsistently capitalized. I'm sorry, that's super picky. But it looks to be a term of art in a few places, and then other places it's not. And just sort of with the when it's capitalized, assuming it has this specific meeting, I want confirmation that the presiding officer, anytime it says council member, also includes the presiding officer, correct?
Yes.
Because of course they would be a member of council if it is the mayor or the mayor pro tem.
In Iowa City's setup, yes.
Right, okay. And then for Rule 10, which is labeled agenda deadline, I really liked this as a clarification of kind of how things can be added to the agenda. I don't know if we want to include a deadline, like if things are to be added, it should be the mayor or at least 3 members of council, or, people can add items to the agenda by requesting them to be included by a certain date, or if the intent really was just to say kind of who can request inclusion on the agenda.
Right. Some cities do, in their rules, include a specific agenda, and for some cities, it's really, I don't want to use the word draconian, but boy, you really need to be on the ball and be early. Certainly this council can do that, obviously setting a deadline as it sees fit. Although I would want to have some input from Kelly on that before you settle on a particular date and time. But as you've said, as it's presently formatted, this just speaks to kind of how someone gets an item on the agenda, right?
So I don't know if maybe just titling it something other than agenda deadline. I don't know if that would be more clearer for that. I think because otherwise I assume our deadline is the 24 hours notice as required by state law. Then for the conduct of meetings section in Rule 16, it kind of lays out what the agenda is. And maybe this is answered by that agenda deadline section as far as adding things to the agenda. But under city council information, back in the day, there used to be new business and old business, sort of things that we've talked about before and may want to bring up again, or things that we may want to discuss in the future. I've always been a little uncertain what is the appropriate time to bring forward things we may want to add to a work session or a formal agenda, and to bring it up as a topic. If that's appropriate under city council information, that's great. But I just, or if it needs to be kind of behind the scenes to the clerk with at least 3 counselors.
What item number is that?
So it's in Rule 16. There's kind of the order of consideration of the agenda, and then it's got what all the items will be on the agenda. And number 9 under that list is city council information, which I'm mentioning it there just because I think the way that we've been conducting it in the 2 years I've been on council is that's like reporting on items of interest in the community and sort of like that, making remarks about things that we're aware of or things that we've attended. And so if that's the appropriate time to ask, hey, do we want to talk about X, Y, Z in the future? I just am hoping for clarification on that.
Well, as you're probably aware, of course, the potential danger is getting into a substantive conversation about a topic that has not been noticed up. Now, what you're proposing, I think, is fine. I think you're suggesting, hey, there's this topic, I'd like to talk about it. Does, council as a body want to talk about it next time as well? I think that's fine, and I think it's appropriate to raise it at that level. If you're looking for a separate number, obviously we can do that if that's the will of the council.
Well, it's just more like if these are our rules for our conduct, I just wanted to be really clear on, for as we've been operating, I wasn't sure if that was appropriate there or not, but sounds like it would be okay.
Yeah.
I like the idea, personally, I like the idea of doing it then because it also is more transparent than doing it behind the scenes. I mean, you can do it behind the scenes, but if a counselor can say, would really like to get topic X on the work session or whatever, or on our work session agenda, do I have, and if then you as the presiding officer says, are there at least 2 other counselors who want to do that, then everybody is put on notice, not just the council. So it's
I think historically that has occurred at the work session under the IP of the pending work session topics is when that's typically brought up. But as Eric said, I don't think there's any harm in doing it here. I just don't know that we need to call it out on the agenda.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to get back to Councilmember Harmson about the Robert's rules. We do, in fact, in 156, talk about the rules of parliamentary practices comprised in the current edition of Robert's Rules of Orders as amended. So,
Okay, thank you.
Rule 19 differentiates for people who address the council, I think, during public comment versus during a public hearing. And the public hearing requires a speaker who is a party in interest to, by virtue of their address, to provide their address and group affiliation. Is there, I just wasn't sure what the basis for that was or if that's a necessary distinction.
right. Well, because let me make sure I'm looking at the right rule. You said 19?
19.
Yeah. There are some matters that folks can object and be part of a petition, objecting only by virtue of their address. And so if they're identifying themselves, and not that any member of the public can't speak to that item, of course, but I think the council would probably want to know, they're a neighbor. They're one of the ones who can object because, as the state statute pulls out and kind of gives those folks a special privilege to object. Obviously, you don't have to do it if you don't want to.
Because I think in the past we'd asked everyone to provide their address, and so we're saying just provide your city unless you are someone who's like interested in the specific item during a public hearing. Is that a fair way to
Yes.
say it? Okay. I do think under the kind of 21 and 22, I agree with what Councilors Harmson and Weiner indicated about, being not prohibiting those things that we know we can't really prohibit. I would urge us to be really careful to move anything that is aspirational or an expectation into a section that just states that says these are our expectations for how people will conduct themselves at our meeting. Because I think as it's presented to me, it could be that if you violate any of these things, then, certain sort of corrective action could happen. And I just I'm not comfortable saying that we'll sort of impose some limitation on someone if they violate a rule that we're all in agreement probably is not enforceable. So I think if we can just kind of have a list of expectations that are very clear, that we're all adults and we hope to conduct ourselves civilly, and then those that we would want to actually enforce.
What rule number are you on?
22. I think also, 21 and 22. So 21 is personal, repetitive, slanderous. I think we can limit, but that's it's a real high bar. And disruptive, because that's not content-based, I think we can limit.
And you can certainly continue, but I think as we're going through this, if there is something that counselors wanted to, you can have a conversation with our colleague or any colleague as they're stating something. I think specifically if there's something that maybe you have a different thought about, so that, because at this point, like at least I'm writing down stuff, and I know our city attorney is, these are going to be the changes unless we hear some further discussion here.
I actually have I have a question. This came up actually when we were discussing rules, and it is specifically about First Amendment versus being able to conduct the business of the meeting. And certainly we don't want to codify things that, I see this as a big tension, right? And it's something that we're worrying through. And so I guess the fulcrum upon which I have curiosity and questions about is, at what point, how are we able to define disruption, I guess, right? And I go back to the beginning, which is, as the city attorney framed it, which was us being able to carry on the business of the meeting. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's a tension there between, and understandably so, between the First Amendment rights of an individual to express themselves, along with then sort of the purpose and function of the meeting. And I'm wondering if there's a way in which we can reconcile it, because right now it seems that that reconciliation or that mitigation is not viable, is what I'm hearing, at least from different people.
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on the nature of the disruption, I think. For example, as Councilor Burgess indicated, there are some things like, oh, is that really slanderous? Is it really not? Is it, germane? Well, these rules, as currently written, empower the presiding officer to make that determination whether it's germane or not and so forth. But some of the other disruptions, hypothetically, and which you've experienced yourself in the past, have been, folks shouting out from the audience, for example, when they're not at the podium and have not been recognized to speak. That's disruption. I mean, there's no, I have no difficulty in calling that disruptive. Folks who violate the rules that are clear set, if the mayor indicates there's 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you folks decide, and person keeps talking or says, I don't care. I don't care what your rules are, I'm still talking. Well, that's clearly disruptive too. So, I mean, there are a number of things that I think would be clear and obvious. And again, it's the presiding officer who makes that determination. I think these rules indicate that, the presiding officer can look to me to, for confirmation or something, but it'll be the presiding officer making that call. And I think most of the time it'll be pretty obvious.
Thank you. That helps. And actually, I give Councilor Burgess a nod, because it seems really actually the way to be able to understand this is process versus content.
I think that's exactly right. We can prescribe the time, the place, and the manner. We say 3 minutes addressing us from the podium or from Zoom during this prescribed time, but the content, the substance of what they're saying is what we can't prohibit.
I think even something being germane to the topic, I think that's pretty solid ground as well. If we're having a hearing about issue X, and I think, if we say we're at a meeting and we're hearing from people who are going to talk about the rezoning of this piece of property, that the people that speak in that specific part of the meeting need to speak to that specific agenda item. I think that's safe. But I think when we get anything more like into content, like this, this is insulting, or this is something like that, when I read it as public officials, we don't have a lot of latitude there. The presumption is more free speech in most of what I've read. And even, there are some very narrow exceptions where, fighting words, although that definition is a little bit hazy, clear and present threats, things like that. So there are a few things where the free speech protections don't legally and historically extend. But I think in terms of like just content neutral, somebody speaking out of turn from the audience, somebody going past their time, somebody who's clearly not speaking to the agenda item that's being there. Like, those are content neutral in terms of we're not judging like this offends me, this doesn't offend me, because that's when we get into trouble. At least in terms of like with the freedom of speech kinds of concerns. But the other stuff, I think we have the people's business to do, and when the disruption is happening, we do have a duty to conduct the business, and as well as a legal right to conduct our business. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Mayor Pro Tem, I think in my response to that as well is just the idea of germaneness, which is going to be up to the presiding officer just to decide, is this germane to the topic at hand? Like, are you talking about the corner of Scott and whatever it is, or are you talking about something that really has nothing to do with the decision we're making? And then that can, if they're not abiding, if that's the case, then the presiding officer can move into the rules that are down below without us having to prescribe content.
I think one other thing that works in our favor is that we provide other avenues. So we do have that open comment section for things not on the agenda. So we are providing those other avenues, those alternate avenues of being heard. Additionally, there's other ways of communicating, which of course we're always allowed. Other sorts of listening posts. Now that we're starting those again, other kinds of avenues. So I think that also helps us to do our duty, but also gives us the to say, yeah, you can't. We're talking about the zoning of this particular piece of property. But certainly other issues, we want to hear from you. They're important, and we're going to give you this opportunity in this open public comment section at the beginning of every meeting. And as noted, I think in Eric or somebody else, there are cities that are just really, I don't think are acting in good faith. We'll give 5 minutes of public comment total split among the people that are here. That's you know, that's to me, that's totally, it might be living up to the letter of the law, but certainly not the spirit of it. And I think we do, with the way we do it, we have, you know, we're with the spirit of what we should be doing, I think, so.
I think too, one of the struggles we're having is we're in a moment where having conversations isn't as easy as it would be normally. And I think we're all looking for conversations. I mean, I see that, you know, that's been one of the areas of friction at our meetings is, you know, the community or the speaker expecting a response, and that's not the way these meetings are structured. But, you know, I certainly would prefer conversations, and those can happen in other ways, other opportunities for that. And I certainly hope that, you know, in the coming months, we'll be able to kind of return to the opportunity for having those conversations, which are much, you know, are an important part of our decision-making in our formal meetings. And it hasn't been able to happen. So I hope if that returns, the pressure on these public formal meetings that we have will be relieved to a certain extent in terms of having that opportunity.
I agree with that, and I'm looking forward to the listening posts that is coming up, and I'm glad to see that. Unfortunately, being Zoom, I think the in-person provided a much better avenue for that sort of face-to-face and councilperson to community member discussion. But I'll be curious to see how many people do actually sign on to the Zoom and carry on the conversation. And I encourage public to do that, because as John alluded to and others, that's a good, appropriate time to bring up those kinds of concerns and issues that you don't have time on the agenda to talk about.
Lots of discussion so far. I just wanted to add that, at least for me, when I think about what is the purpose of these rules, what is the underlining goal, and I think it's really to give the public, the council, staff, everybody some expectations, a baseline, and I think it also allows us time to think about maybe some of the things that have happened in the past and how can we create a space where people from the community can come and, you know, share their concerns. The other thing that I'm clearly aware of is that by having these, you know, it could encourage some people to, you know, be disruptive or do some things. I am more optimistic that won't be the situation, because I think the heart of this is really to ensure that everyone has opportunity. And I think the overall thing that we'll see from having rules in place is people that come here that have never been here before will feel welcomed, and they won't be intimidated potentially by something that will scare them to come up and voice their own concerns before their elected officials. And so I think the rules are coming at a time where I think the spirit is not to say, hey, we want to be mean, we want to really create this, this order. It really is in the spirit to make sure that everyone feels welcome to come and speak, not feel intimidated, to get up and express themselves. And so I appreciate the conversation so far. And it can continue. I'm not cutting it off. I wanted to, so I've been making some notes, and as I see it, the committee may need to meet one more time to walk away with some of these notes to make sure that the intent of council collaborative voices are expressed. But I wanted to maybe, unless our city attorney has clarification on number 22 and 21 about the slanderous, there's been some conversation surrounding that. At least for me, I'm not exactly clear on what should be included and what will be removed. Everything else, I think, is pretty, I think it has been expressed very clearly. Maybe Councilor Thomas did mention about the public hearings. You know, I don't know if that is something that we want to, if you're proposing that we do something different. Right now it is 3 minutes. Unless, if someone called me ahead of time or notified the city ahead of time that they wanted to do a longer presentation, typically what I've encouraged them at that point is there another person within your organization or within your affiliation that has the same concern that can, go back to back? And that's actually been well received because it was ahead of time. Now, when people come here and they're not aware, which is, oftentimes the situation, then that's where it becomes a little bit cumbersome. Most times when we have extended, engagement beyond the 3 minutes, I would say either it's from someone that hadn't had that conversation yet, they weren't aware, and they are very passionate about what they need to express and share. And for them, it does seem abrupt, that, the 3 minutes has ended. I'm not sure, what the council consensus is, but at least in my experience, the 3 minutes has really worked. We used to be 5 minutes when I first got on council in 2018. Our comments were 5 minutes. We switched it to 3 minutes, maybe 2020, maybe 2019, but it was 5 minutes when I first came to council. But I don't know how we would determine if someone was to get 5 minutes. I would just make mention that it, surprisingly to a lot of people that come, the 3 minutes, when they come and they show up and they learn that it's 3 minutes and, they have something prepared. We've seen other people that come and they have a line of like 6 people that do their presentation. Those are people that are fully aware of the time limits, and they've been, switching, and Kelly just switches, they come and introduce themselves, and Kelly just restarts the timer. So, I think and oftentimes if it is, a topic, any agenda item, typically that agenda item, there are people from the community that, there's going to be 2 sides typically, one that's for and one that's against. And so, many people will be sharing, similar stories on both sides. Now, there are some presentations that I've witnessed that is very intel, that is beyond, maybe the feelings related to the topic on the agenda, and maybe bringing some more descriptive or some type of literature that identifies, some statistical points that we need to be made aware of, or quantitative points. But if we're thinking about switching the time limits, at least from me as the current presiding officer, I think I would love for it to be very clear to the public when we will increase, and for me, the presiding officer as well.
Well, that's why I suggested the public hearing as a trigger. And I was just, as you were talking, I was remembering my first time speaking at a city council meeting, and on a planning and zoning matter, and I went way over what, I don't even remember there being a limit, but I'm sure I went over 5 minutes.
You made them start the limit.
Yeah, I could have been the trigger of the time limit, but I think that it's a big part of this is the discretion issue on the part of the presiding officer. But it does seem to me, again, based on what I've seen, that 5 minutes for public hearing items is reasonable. But, that can always be adjusted, as appropriate by the presiding officer. I had kind of arrived at that, and then I did briefly looked at other cities. Cedar Rapids actually landed in that spot. It was 5 minutes for public hearings. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, and maybe that's part of when the committee gets back together, is spending some time looking at what other comparable jurisdictions have structured, how they've structured their meetings.
When it comes to, I want to make one comment about public hearings. There are some jurisdictions that require, if it's something related to an address, you have to be within that. You have to be immediately affected, and so no one outside of that address area. I don't know how they determine the area that they cannot comment, and so I don't know if I'm not suggesting we go there, but some of those things do go into play if we look at other jurisdictions.
Right. No, I was thinking specifically on the time limit aspect, seeing what other cities how they've structured their meetings.
And I will add that at least one of the rationale that I've spoke to someone about why they do that is because these are the people that are immediately impacted. Now, that could be questioned on a lot of levels, but that's why they're the ones that are allowed to speak. And but yeah,
I mean, I guess what I might suggest as a compromise is, if in a particular public hearing it seems like people need more time, then it would be good if the presiding officer could be consistent within that public hearing. So if somebody needs 5 minutes, then you would offer 5 minutes to other people who are in that particular public hearing.
Do you think we might be putting the presiding officer in sort of an untenable situation, though? Because the accusations of, well, you gave this person 5 minutes, but you only let me have the 3, or this last issue that was an hour ago, they got 5 minutes, but now we're only getting 3. As opposed, I know we do have a bit of an exception in these for like a person like the zoning issue, like if somebody's presenting on something and they're part of the agenda, we have essentially allowed or invited them to speak at more at length because they're an agenda item. So I wonder if maybe we might be well-intentioned and given the presiding officer, whoever that is, more like in the moment latitude, but we might also, I wonder if there's not like a stumbling block built into that, and I see you.
Well, I want to be clear, you couldn't, or the presiding officer couldn't say, Speaker 1 gets 5 minutes, again, assuming they're not a party to the rezoning or something like that. Speaker 1 gets 5 minutes, Speaker 2, I don't like you, so you get 2 minutes, or something like that.
We wouldn't say that.
Yeah, you couldn't say it or do it. You couldn't do either of those things. But I could imagine a circumstance in which there was, let's say, a zoning item or something, and you as a council sit through 45 minutes worth of presentation on this item first, and then you see 75 people lined up to speak about it. You could imagine a presiding officer at that point saying, okay, how many people would like to speak to this? Raise your hand. He looks out to a full room and thinks, okay, maybe 2 minutes, or something. So it's that, I think that's the kind of discretion that the rules are intended to grant to the presiding officer, not you get 3, you get 5,
And I think
because I like you
makes
and I
sense.
don't like you.
It seems also like it's worth pointing out that at that point, I know that there have been arguments from audience or certainly sentiment saying, let them speak more, you're cutting them off. But I think particularly in the instance that you just described, and I have sat in multiple public hearings where there have been a lot of passion and a lot of people have shown up, that this is not about cutting people off, it's allowing as many people as possible to be able to speak, albeit with a shorter time. So maybe that's something that, along with not codified, but to allow the presiding officer to say, because there are so many people and we want to hear from so many of you, we're cutting it down. Just again, to be transparent about why this is happening. I think could help. That, again, I'm very mindful of what you were talking about, Mayor, how these rules are not to disengage or push people away. It's actually to welcome them so that people know how to engage best in a way that's both an opportunity for them as well as for us to be able to hear what they're saying and conduct our business. It's a kind of three-parter. But to have that public speaking component when there's a lot of people with a lot of passion, to understand that it's not so much a matter of we're trying to curtail what you're saying as it is we want to be able to hear from as many people as possible, that might be helpful.
And I've certainly seen that where, you know, the mayor will say how many wish to speak to this item, and that then determines, has an influence on the amount of time each person is given. Because, yeah, if it's a large number of people, it can break the flow of the meeting and not allow us to do the work. So that's a critical variable.
Sure, and certainly I don't mean to do that as the other side of the coin to your comments about allowing for people to have the time that they want to speak. I mean, I think that it's a tricky wicket. You think that we've sort of set something out, but Councilor, you're also pointing it out, that to put the onus on the presiding officer can be difficult, but if there's maybe some of that transparency and explanatory language in particular circumstances, then at least people understand where these decisions are coming from, as opposed to it seeming like it's arbitrary.
I think it's also important for the audience to know that, kind of relating to what you said, Councilor Harmson, that the presenters, the architects, the developers, the property owners, they're not held to that 3 to 5 minute time limit. They're part of the presentation, and it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, but that's for our understanding of the whole situation. I think that's been a misunderstanding on the part of some of the audience. Well, you let them talk for that long, but I think it needs to be clear. I don't know that we need the language in here, but that the actual presenters have whatever time is necessary for them to provide their topic. I think that's important.
I think one other thing that we've noticed when there are large numbers of speakers is frequently many of them have a very similar message, and so if the time needs to be cut down in order to accommodate more people, that may well be sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And do I think I hear one of the things that's being said here is that a decision on adapting this time would happen like before the public comments on a particular issue start, not once they have begun. So, you know, if they've started at 2 minutes, there wouldn't be a change like 5 speakers in, or I think that's what I hear is the intention.
Sometimes it happens because we don't have a sign up ahead of time.
Sure.
One thing that might be helpful is if we had a time limit. I know for our public comment, we have a max time limit of 30 minutes. Even if it goes beyond 7 p.m., the max time is 30 minutes. We don't have, clarified, which I'm not suggesting that we do have for the other agenda items so far. I think, at least for me and, the presiding officer, have kind of gauged where the crowd is, especially if I know it's a hot topic. Zoom was helpful because we would have everyone raise their hand, and then I would see how many people, and then, I would, pretty much cut it down to 2 minutes, and then just say, at this point, we're going to stop after, this person. But, and then other people will jump in, but just wouldn't allow that, So, I think I can certainly state from the beginning, we have 20 people in line, that type stuff. But there's only a few items that are that there'll be a crowd on, and I think that's kind of maybe some of those items that you're getting at, where there might be an association that might come forth and have a longer presentation. I think in the, as I'm hearing all the comments, I think there's a lot that goes into why it should be consistent across the board. I think I get it, and oftentimes some of those individuals will have one-on-ones with us, and if they're going to come, I think that's our opportunity to say, if you have a presentation, because typically they share that presentation with us beforehand, just let them know that it'll be 3 minutes, although it could be dropped down to 2, and then just make sure you have people to come up and kind of keep the conversation going. We have had, I think, a couple instances where someone wanted to give their time to someone else. I don't know if that's something we should, entertain. I know I've sat here once and, someone needed to speak on their behalf for whatever reason.
I think one of the rules here that proposed that if we go down that route is to say, like, that could happen one time. Because, one thing you could see is somebody who wants to take over the entire conversation could have 10 friends, and if we, that's half an hour or 50 minutes if we go to 5 minutes, So, I think there could be some, like, a system that could be gamed if we went too far down that. I think if we do that, the limit of, like, one person could give their time as opposed to, like, having, something that would just, again, would derail the whole point of us being here is to get the work done. So, while hearing from as many people as possible.
I guess if there is a little, I think even one time we had maybe an association that was speaking for a group of people that stood, maybe, in that instance, if it's only one person speaking, 10 people, a lot of people here where we're only hearing from one person and not 10, but I guess in that moment, I can look at council and use my discretion at that point.
Well, just to be clear, under the present draft, they can only, as Councilor Harmson was suggesting, only 2 people could combine into one for a total of 6 minutes, or it would be 10 minutes if you went to 5. So if you wanted to have more discretion than that, we would probably want to make an amendment to that part.
What I heard the mayor saying was that he would look to council for a majority to agree that it could be changed. Is that right, Mayor? Because I think the rules do provide for that.
Right, because the rules can be amended by a majority, not, they can be set aside for a moment and so forth to allow for something else if there's, as you say, a majority of council members agree.
Yep. And I've done that when council has kind of jumped in before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I feel like, Mayor, you've always handled that really well. I feel like that's been really functional when we've had those few instances where it's been kind of a different situation and we've been able to let the public comment proceed in a way that I think better met the hope of the people who were appearing.
Sure. All right. So as far as the timing on the public hearing, I just want to make sure that I understand where we are. Are we keeping things the same at the 3 minutes and with the discretion, and if there's something?
I kind of like the 3 minutes, although I take Council Member Thomas's comments, are well understood. But I still think 3 minutes, is reasonable. If we have, that's my thought.
Okay.
If you organize yourself, you can say a lot in 3 minutes.
I think there's value in having it be consistent throughout the meeting. Like, I appreciate what you're saying, John, but I do think it could be confusing for people if during public comment they're limited to 3 minutes, but then other people, get 5 minutes. I just think for the expectation setting, it might be helpful to have it be throughout the meeting. Members of the public can comment for 3 minutes, unless there's a big group and it gets limited.
Well, I would also just say that whatever is decided, I think we need to kind of observe how it works and see if, in fact, we feel that we're here from the community that they're being cut off. Just see how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sounds good. Because there's a few other things on our work session agenda. At least for the 22 and the 21. Are you good if we get together and kind of work through those, or do you need a little more?
Yes, what I would suggest is that I'll take another crack at revising the rules based on our discussion this evening, and then I'll circulate it to the 3 members who have been involved in review previously, and then we could meet And then when the three of you are satisfied with what's been presented, then we'll bring it back to council.
And do we want to bring it in a work session, or do we feel like we're ready to put it on the agenda for a formal vote? There isn't a lot of changes, overall.
I would be curious to know what the rest of council feels. I think it's Rule 26, I think. Once we get into, it's kind of the consequences part. It's not a fun thing to think about, but I would
23.
23, thank you. I would certainly want to get feedback from council on that before we worked these revisions in and then went to a vote. I would very much like to hear what people have to say on that. So, I mean, whether that's that we carry it over, or that we talk about it now, or I don't know. And I apologize for lengthening the conversation when I know you wanted to go on, but it just seems to me that this is sort of an important thing for us to work through.
Sure. And as I see it, as progressive, it just increases. The hope is that we don't have to get to any of that.
Absolutely.
I guess my feedback would just be on that I'm not comfortable with it including those things that we think are not enforceable. So like as written. So the next draft, I think that our city attorney will bring us to kind of separate out those things that are aspirational versus what would be enforceable. I'm comfortable with this, given that it's if it was only those things that are actually, that which we can kind of legally enforce and stand behind, and the fact that it's at a single meeting, right? So it doesn't, that it's sort of it's not, it's intended to be sort of I don't know quite how to say it, but that it's
Cumulative?
Right.
It's on one or more occasion during a council meeting, right? And so it's not like if you get a verbal warning at one meeting, then the next meeting you're going to jump right to step 2, right?
Right. No, I don't think that wasn't our.
So that makes me more comfortable with it.
I'm not sure that was my, you can certainly still get a verbal warning at each meeting,
Right.
But but at some point it may jump quickly to, being directed to leave, because this individual, is their second time up. It's going to be a little more progressive.
Are you suggesting within a meeting? Are you?
Sure, it's still within a meeting. But once you get to being suspended from it, or attending one or more meetings, then that's probably where the other, 2 can, come into play.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'd like to kind of see the separated out list, and then, like I said, I'm pretty comfortable with, I think, how it's framed up. I still don't ever want to arrest someone at a meeting. But that's, I think I've made that clear before.
Sure.
I had a couple really small things that I just want to throw out if we're doing a revision.
Sure.
Did we want to say anything about work sessions? So the only place that I saw work session mentioned was the limitation to public comment, which is on Rule 18. But I didn't know if it was confusing for members of the public that the framing of meetings in this whole document is really formal meetings, and maybe just some nod to the fact that work sessions exist and they don't run this way.
Sure, I can add something to that effect.
Reasonable. And then under Rule 26, I just don't know about the word debate. So maybe in Robert's rules that's clearer, but I think in my mind that's council discussion as far as when that happens in the meeting. At the conclusion of debate, the presiding officer shall call for a vote, or we can call the question. I don't know if maybe if we don't ever use the term debate, maybe using the term council discussion is clearer. I might be alone in thinking that, but.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of which rule you were referring to.
Rule 26, the call for vote.
Got it.
Maybe we need to be debating more. I don't know. I don't feel like we debate. There's certainly meetings that have much more formal debate format, but that's not us. Those are my only other comments. Thank you.
I would agree with Councilmember Burgess and Councilmember Alter. Rule 23, I actually had more misgivings about if we were leaving it to the presiding officer to decide, for instance, you know, what is disrespectful or whatever the verbiage is in some. But if we take that out and we are making that more clear and we're being more content neutral, I have less problems. And I just want to point out too, this is. One of the things, too, as I read through this, and you'd asked earlier about should it come back to another work session, I'm inclined to think so, just because we're making these rules for, you know, whoever comes next. So it's not just the people that are here. And so, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, what we leave, we're kind of passing forward to the people that might be sitting at these seats, you know, 5, 6, 7, 3, 2, whatever number of years in the future. You know, whereas, so it's any hesitation I give about this is no reflection at all on the current mayor, or Mayor Pro Tem or anybody else. It's just like we sort of make these rules for whoever comes next. And so want to make sure we don't, like, you know, accidentally, you know, put something in place that we'll regret.
Mm-hmm. All right. Go right ahead.
I was just going to say on that point, just to be clear, this will be adopted by a resolution. And so, you know, if either this council or future council decides they'd like to have a change, either significant or insignificant, one resolution, and that's all that's required for the change. The other point I would want to make is, you know, kind of regardless of where, you know, you folks all end up with this, I'm confident that there will be, you know, an educational process for the public that'll probably involve kind of projecting of some rules here, maybe some notices, you know, at the sign-in sheet over there. We obviously want members of the public to fully know and understand what the rules are and the rationale behind them before, you know, they speak, because, as you say, I mean, sometimes folks, you know, just inadvertently violate the rules because they just don't know what they are. And so I think it's clear that we'll plan to do a better job of educating the public about what these rules are.
Any other comments on this? All right, we'll move on to information packets, or, well, actually clarification of agenda items. I do know that Councilor Burgess will be recusing herself from item number 9A.
That's correct. Thank you.
Any other things from the formal agenda? Moving on to information packet, January 20th. Moving on to information packet, January 27th. And we do have IP7, which is going to be the council proposed annual formal meeting and work session schedule. So typically, we'll hand it over to our city clerk.
Well, I just went with the first and third Tuesdays and laid it all out there. I did note one holiday in October, which is Yom Kippur, and then I know, you know, in the past, typically there's been some reduced meeting schedule in the summer and then in December. And I don't know if the mayor had some suggestions for that, and then we may have to work backwards depending on that to kind of space out the meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you look at July, if we tackle the summer schedules, maybe first, if that's of interest to kind of, in the December schedule, then we can work on the October 4th. So as I see it, I mean, you know, Our second meeting would be the 21st in June. And then if we were to go 3 weeks out, well, that would be the 12th, which would be the second Tuesday in July. And then that would bring us to another 3 weeks, August 2nd. So it would just put us at the 12th where we would have our meeting. And it would only be one in July. So it'd be 3 weeks between the meetings before.
Fine with me.
Me too.
That's okay. All right. Look like we have a majority there. So, and then, and I actually think we kind of really need everybody on board if we're switching meetings. So if anyone has any challenge, I think they should let us know. So in November, we have, if, you know, the 15th is kind of, in November, that's the third Tuesday. If we go 3 out, that brings us to the 6th of December, which is our first Tuesday that we would meet. And then it would be 4 weeks before we meet again. So would people rather meet on the 6th or the 3rd? Do you want the 3 weeks? You know, I think I would prefer the 3 weeks.
Can you repeat that, Mayor?
Yes.
Of the actual dates that you're suggesting?
So the date for December meeting will only be on the 6th. And I went back to the November meeting. The last meeting will be the 15th.
Oh, okay. So there would be no changes then?
No changes in November, but there will be 3 weeks. It will be 3 weeks naturally anyway.
Gotcha.
Because our first meeting would be on the 6th. So we would just cancel the second meeting in December. Again, if there is a need to add a meeting, which we've had to do, we would do that for whatever the need is and find a date, even if it's the original day that we normally meet.
Cancel December 20th, is it?
Correct. Cancel December 20th. All right, here are no conflicts. We'll now discuss October.
So if you, what I can tell you is that if you maintain the October 4th date, I will not be there because Yom Kippur starts at sundown that day on the 4th. So it's preparation and going into the holiday as opposed to coming out of the holiday.
What I might propose is that we find another day during that week. Monday or Wednesday. Typically, I think if we're thinking information, the public would already be noticed 24 hours. I don't know if there's a preference for staff if we go Monday or Wednesdays.
Just so you know, Wednesday doesn't help me.
I'm sorry.
Wednesday doesn't help.
Oh, sure. We'll go. How about Mondays? How about
Monday is fine, and then I'm just letting you know what the schedule of that holiday is.
Sure.
That's all. Yeah.
So, would people agree to Monday,
Absolutely.
October 3rd, yeah.
October 3rd? Great.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. There could be some, as we go through our, all that we're doing, there could be some desire to have some longer work sessions potentially. So we might find that we might collapse a formal meeting and have a longer work session. But as we go along, we're going to do our strategic planning. And I think there's, I've been hearing from people that they want to do some work. I know Councilor Thomas wanted, kind of dig into some stuff. And so we may collapse some of our formal meetings and have longer work sessions. But we'll figure that out as we go along. So there could be some changes coming in the future.
Yeah, this calendar manages to miss Election Day in November, which is great. I would just point out that I don't know if that matters to the council, but the meeting on Tuesday, June 7th, is the day of the statewide primary. If you want to hold it that day, that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody's aware.
Yeah, I think what we've done in the past is we've held them on Election Day unless it is a sitting councilor that is on the ballot, which we would have a sitting councilor on the ballot. So, I mean, we would have a sitting councilor on the ballot. So, my proposal would be that we go Monday the 6th, the day before. I know that puts a lot of stress on any candidate the day before.
If you haven't done your work by Monday evening, you're out of luck.
Yeah. So would people be okay with June 6th, Monday?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So there we have it. Any other items that we need to, take into consideration? Again, I think November 1st would be Election Day, and we'll cross that later.
No, it's the 8th, so basically our current schedule skips the November Election Day this year.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
okay.
Because it's
Perfect.
the second Tuesday, right?
All right. Problem solved there. Any other item with the calendar? All right. You got all that? Great. Thank you. We are going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the University of Iowa Student Government, USG.
Hi,
Welcome.
Council. So we've received nearly 300 responses in our Homeless Week survey sent out to students. Students, based on students' experiences prior to our upcoming meeting with city officials tomorrow, look at our previous announcements for the link, which I realized I hadn't sent out to you all, and we'll be sending out with these announcements after our meeting today. We are hiring a new director of communications, graphic designer, and photographer. Those position applications for students are open until Sunday. The university is continuing to provide free at-home testing for students across campus, and these tests can be found at the welcome desk at the IMU, student health offices, and in residential halls. We are also beginning our governmental relation capital visits days. These will start from February to April for USG members to have a chance to advocate for issues at the Iowa Capitol. And we hope to bring some USG students to City soon as well. And finally, our sustainability director is looking at on how to potentially recycle masks. Let us know if you know anyone, if anyone knows about any current efforts that are happening around Iowa City or in other communities related to this. But that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll see that USG is giving comment during our work session, and so we're going to try this out and see how this plays out. So thank you. Always happy that you're here with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here too.
Yes. All right. Council updates on boards, on assigned boards, commissions, and committees.
We had our recent MPO meeting, and I was very pleased that our own John Thomas was elected as chair for that entity. Very proud, and he ran that meeting and went very smoothly. So congratulations, John. And that meeting, a large portion of it, and I know Laura appreciates this, or Councilor Burgess, because this is near and dear to her, the large portion was discussion continued on the commuter rail project. It's been talked about for many years now. It was a little disappointing to hear that perhaps Crandeck might not plan to support it staffing or financially. So that was a little disappointing to hear, but that's not going to stop the project it's going to continue to be discussed at the next several meetings, but that was a good meeting, and congratulations, John.
Thank you.
I was just going to second that as far as the MPO meeting. And John, I really liked that video that you had us watch. I meant to tell you that. So it was a really cool little 3-minute video about pedestrian bicycle modes of transportation, and with all children speaking to their experiences getting around a city and how empowering and important that is. That was great. I attended my first ECOG meeting virtually, so in a hybrid situation, I really still don't know who most of the members are, but we'll get there.
The ECOG, speaking of ECOG, the ECOG visioning process is for 2030, I guess, is starting to come to a close. We have a virtual meeting this Thursday, and then the rollout, as far as I know, on the afternoon of March 1st, which will start sometime before this council meeting at the Cedar Ridge Brewery.
We had the joint entities meeting, and it was in person and virtual, hybrid option. The one suggestion that Iowa City put forth was to have childcare, a childcare discussion that was well received. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Alter, for kind of bringing this to our attention. And so between now and then, I think we'll work with some childcare partners within the community to kind of just come and do a little bit of a presentation. I think one of the things that I did here is that, it's great to keep the conversations going, but it's also a point where we need to have some action. And so hopefully it'll be some actionable items that cities can walk away with, whether that's grants, federal, state, or local funds. So it will hope to get something more tangible to people in the updates. Hearing nothing else, we are adjourned until 6 p.m. is in place. This is the City of Iowa City formal work meeting on February 1st, 2021, and I'm calling it to order. Roll call, please.
Alter,
Here.
Burgess,
Here.
Harmson,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Teague,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Weiner.
Here.
All right, welcome everyone that is in person and also to those that are virtually. We welcome you today. The first item on our agenda is going to be the proclamation, item number 2. And 2A is proclamation for Black History Month. Whereas each year, Black History Month is observed in February, and whereas the origins of Black History Month date back to 1915, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the organization known today as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas observing Black History Month provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of African American history and knowledge the centuries of struggles for equality and freedom. And whereas Black History Month also celebrates the achievements and contributions that African Americans have made in shaping our country, society, and communities. And whereas every year, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History sets a theme for Black History Month. And the theme for 2022 is Black Health and Wellness. And whereas this year's Black History Month theme acknowledges the legacy of not only Black scholars and medical practitioners in Western medicine, but also other ways of knowing. Throughout the African diaspora, the 2022 theme considers activities, rituals, and initiatives that Black communities have done to be well, explores the complexity and dynamic of African American families and their stories throughout history. And whereas to participate in observing Black History Month, those interested can visit the African American Museum of Iowa to learn more about the origins of the month, this year's theme, and Black history in Iowa. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Teague, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim February 2020 as Black History Month and encourage everyone to observe this month by acknowledging the history and challenges faced by African Americans and paying tribute to this community for its strength, perseverance, character, and contributions, all of which enrich our lives. And to receive this is Roger Lucella from the Human Rights Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. I have a few remarks here. Black history is American history. No question, no arguments there. Yes, it's that time of a year where we as a nation honor the impact and contribution of African Americans in the United States. It's the time where we teach about Dr. King, George Washington Carver, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, and countless other people that have made this country great. But how genuine is the honor if it only lasts one short month? The accomplishment of Black people does not fit in 1 month. The fact is, Black people have been making great achievements since the beginning of this country and have been part of the creation and the foundation of many things we all hold dear. Black History Month should not just be the time to celebrate African American history or celebrate those that have paved the way for many of us. It should also be the time to challenge our nation to stop teaching Black history as a footnote. We deserve better. Black people continue to make history every day, even here in our own community. Our very own Mayor Teague, my friend, made history as the first openly gay black man to serve as our mayor. This year, my friend Hossein Porter from the Board of Supervisors made history as the first African-American chair of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. I challenge you to commit using your influence in this room to push the issue that black history is American history. And to quote Maya Angelou, won't it be wonderful when black history and Native American history and Jewish history and Latino history is all U.S. history and taught from one single book? Until that becomes a reality, we will continue to celebrate black history. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucella, for your remarks. We are on to item number 3, which is our consent agenda, items 3 through 7. Could I get a motion, please?
So move,
Move
Thomas.
approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
I'll give it to Weiner and seconded by Taylor. And would anyone from the public like to address an item that is on the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 7? And we do have those that are online. If you're online, you can raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Seeing no hands raised. Council discussion. Roll call, please.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We are on to item number 8, which is our public comment time, community comment time. And individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. The community period will end at 7 p.m. unless an extension is needed for 30 minutes maximum, which we won't need that today. And if someone is wanting to speak, if you're online, if you can raise your hand at this time so that I can acknowledge you. And if you're in the audience, I ask that you sign in where they are at that table, and then please line up so that I can acknowledge you. And we'll start in person here with our first speaker. Please state your name and city. Welcome.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ninosca Campos, soy de la Coalición de Trabajadores Excluidos de Iowa City.
Good afternoon. My name is Nurka Campos. I'm from the Excluded Worker Fund of Iowa City.
Estamos agradecidos por el 1.5 millones de dólares que han brindado al apoyo de los trabajadores excluidos.
We're very thankful for the $1.5 million that you have brought in aid to the excluded workers,
Donde pienso que se debe atender con prioridad a todos los trabajadores excluidos,
which I think that it is a priority to take care of all the excluded workers
porque fueron los más afectados durante la pandemia sin tener ningún tipo de beneficio.
because they were the most affected in the pandemic without having any type of benefit.
Ustedes aprobaron un proceso para la distribución del dinero para los trabajadores excluidos.
You approved a mode of distribution of the money to the excluded workers,
Lo cual se debe respetar.
which must be respected.
Yo pienso que ustedes tienen que actuar de una manera colaborativa
I think that you have to act in a collaborative way
y responsable.
and a responsible way.
Nosotros no tuvimos una igualdad equitativa como las demás personas.
We did not have the same equality as everybody else.
Pienso que deberían de trabajar mano a mano con la coalición de trabajadores excluidos
I believe that you should work hand in hand with the Coalition of Excluded Workers
para asegurarnos que el condado de Johnson cumpla y respete ese acuerdo.
to ensure that Johnson County meets and respects that accord,
Para que distribuyan y se respete el fondo de los trabajadores excluidos.
to distribute and respect that fund that is for the excluded workers.
No es justo que ahora cambien o ya cambiaron
It's not fair to now change it or to already have changed it.
El programa que se creó desde el principio para los trabajadores excluidos,
The program that has from the beginning been for the excluded workers,
a ponerle el nombre de impacto negativo.
and to now name it to negative impact.
Es inaceptable
It's unacceptable
que ahora simplemente en este proceso de ayuda,
that now in this process of help,
el sistema de lotería,
it's going to be a lottery system
donde entrarían posibilidades
where it would be a possibility
que las personas tuvieran menos aciertos para recibir esta ayuda.
that people would even have a lower chance of receiving this help.
Esto es para mi persona
This is, for me personally,
una modalidad de apuesta
a way of gambling
donde cientos de personas quedarían nuevamente excluidas,
where hundreds of people would once again be excluded.
donde ustedes saben que desde el principio se luchó para un fondo de trabajadores excluidos,
When you know that from the beginning we've been fighting for a fund for the excluded workers,
donde ese fue el acuerdo de su votación.
and that was the agreement of the voting,
Y como ellos queremos que se respete,
and we want it to be respected,
para que todas estas personas reciban con prioridad la ayuda de un cheque de estímulo.
so that these people can receive with priority the help of a stimulus check,
Porque no sería justo
because it wouldn't be fair
si se implementa la lotería.
if a lottery is implemented.
No les voy a decir que los latinos hacemos el trabajo más duro de este país porque ustedes ya lo saben.
I'm not going to tell you that Latinos do the hardest work in this country because you already know that.
Yo estoy aquí para exigirles y decirles
I am here to demand and to tell you,
que se recuerden cada uno de ustedes la lucha que se tuvo desde el principio,
to remind yourselves of the fight that's been going on since the beginning,
donde era un fondo para trabajadores excluidos, no había otro nombre,
where it was a fund for the excluded workers. There was no other name for it.
donde ya cambiaron el nombre a impacto negativo.
And now you changed the name to negative impact.
Y la pandemia fue impacto negativo a nivel mundial,
The pandemic had a negative impact on a world level,
pero el impacto negativo lo tuvieron las personas inmigrantes.
but the negative impact here was on the immigrant people.
Además, ustedes no se han puesto a pensar que estos cheques de ayuda que le den a las personas
And what's more, you haven't thought about these checks that you're giving to help people
va a quedar en el desarrollo de la economía de Iowa City.
are going to go right back into the development of the economy of Iowa City.
Porque ¿dónde piensan ustedes de que la gente va a gastar ese dinero?
Because where else do you think people are going to spend that money?
En los mismos lugares de Iowa City, en las tiendas de Iowa City.
In the same places here in Iowa City, in the same shops here in Iowa City.
Ahora no estamos de acuerdo que implementen la lotería.
And we do not agree that you implement the lottery.
¿Qué es eso, señores? Hay que ser un poquito más serio con la dignidad de las personas.
What is that? We have to be a little more serious with people's dignity.
Lo que se promete se cumple.
What is promised has to be saw through.
Ustedes saben.
You know that.
Si no, en un sistema de lotería muchas personas van a quedar afuera.
Otherwise, in a lottery system, a lot of people will be left out.
Si quieren beneficiar otros terceros grupos de personas que no han luchado por esta causa,
And if you want to benefit other people, a third party that has not been part of this fight,
tienen suficiente dinero para crear otro programa para que ayuden a otras personas.
you have more than enough money to implement another program to help
Lo
other
que
people.
queremos es que no jueguen con la dignidad de las personas latinas, inmigrantes que han servido mucho a esta sociedad y la economía de este estado.
What we want is for you to not play with the dignity and the respect of the
Eso es todo de
Hispanic
mi
people
parte, gracias.
who have given so much to this community and this economy. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. And online, I'm going to call Amel. Welcome. And we'll have that followed by Nicholas. Your mic is muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. First and foremost, I just want to thank Laura and Sean for their time yesterday at the listening post. I would encourage you guys to have more of these in the future. It was really helpful to be able to engage with council members and hear what you guys are doing as council what you guys are working on behind the scenes, as well as make council members aware of the current issues some of the constituents have that you may not have even been aware of. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for being mindful of hearing all of your constituents and wanting to be as transparent as possible during the discussion about the rules. Janice, with all due respect, lots of people talking about the same topic means that that said topic is important to your constituents. And respectfully, I think that that comment you made during the work session was made in poor taste. I'm glad you're all considering having another work session regarding these council rules, and I'm asking you guys to please consider having listening posts that include the city manager, the assistant city manager, along with the city attorney present as well. City Attorney Eric Goers wants to inform the public on the rules, and I don't know if I can figure out how helpful or how that could work, because your social media coordinator can't even tweet the right times of the TRC meetings. They tweet them days after. During the discussion about these rules, you guys talked about intimidation from disruptive commentators, but I'm worried about the intimidation of involving police in a public setting where most of the time the presiding officer is Black. They're undocumented immigrants speaking. Arresting your disruptive constituents is not the answer. You currently have more power in these hybrid meetings. You can mute people, remove them. All of that is better than anything after the first 3 bullets in Rule 23. Iowa City claims to be a progressive city. Rule 23 is anything but progressive. I'm really worried, embarrassed, and hurt by the discussions this council is having regarding public participation. Please, please involve your constituents in these discussions, and I'm urging you guys to do better, especially regarding Rule 23, and please think hard about what this implies the council feels about public comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Oh, shoot. I just realized I got my link from Nicholas's post, so that's probably why I came up as Nicholas. I'm not Nicholas. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Taylor.
Okay. All right. My name is Taylor Cohn. I just wanted to say, I don't know how you're not embarrassed to say that that December meeting was disrupted. The meeting went longer than it would have if those residents hadn't spoken, but they spoke during designated times within your time limits. Reacting to something so mild in this way makes you all look like you can't take the tiniest bit of pushback. All those speakers did at that meeting was advocate for a winter shelter and hybrid meetings. All they did was make you sit here in this room for a while longer. It might have hurt your feelings, but you know that that's part of the job that you do for the public. So those rule changes are unacceptable. And it looks very silly that you feel so threatened by your constituents using the proper channels to engage with you, that you feel like you have to change the rules to prevent it. And I want to especially point out that the reason people don't talk nice to you is because they feel like you've failed them. They see things that council could do to help them and their neighbors, and they don't like that you haven't done them. And then they really don't like it if you refuse to do them. So if they already feel that way and you lash out at the public by approving these rule changes that make it harder for them to express that, do you think that things are going to get better? If you actually want your meetings to go more smoothly, if that's actually the goal of this, you would listen to what people want and actually engage with them, like the listening post last night. That was honestly relatively really great compared to council meetings. It allowed people to actually have a conversation. So thank you to Councilor Burgess and Harmsen for that. If you want to reduce tension between you and the public, limiting public comment is not the answer, because clearly the problem is that public comment is just an insufficient method for interacting with the public inherently. So don't make it worse. Don't, put restrictions on it. Don't put punishments on it. Find other ways to engage so that people don't feel like that's the only way they have a chance to be heard. And above all, there must be no punitive measures. There absolutely must not. You do not want to use Des Moines as a model. I hope you saw the uproar in the media about some of Des Moines City Council's latest actions. I have plenty of differences with several of you on this council, but I do believe to an extent most of you want to preserve some kind of healthy relationship with the public. And Des Moines has no such desire. They are hostile. They are even violent. They've had paddy wagons and SWAT teams at their council meetings. They've had residents arrested for standing silently in a council chamber. There's a video on the city YouTube channel, because it's a public record, of a police officer slamming a young Black woman to the ground because she stood on a chair. It's horrible to watch. You absolutely do not want to take even a step in that direction for everyone's sake. And I'll say it, Mayor Bruce Teague, it's clear that you want to arrest people. It is obvious. You've been pushing for this harder than anyone, and talking softly and nicely while you do so doesn't make it any better that you're clearly drooling to punish people for having the nerve to inconvenience you. You even admitted that you want to target specific people in the work session. Your exact words were, you know this individual, you know it's their second time up. We all know the events you're referring to. We all know this is about a specific person, maybe even a couple who made you mad recently. So I'm appealing to the rest of you.
We'll have the next person come up inside the chambers. Welcome. Please state your name and city you're from.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hi, good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Heidi Cortés y vivo aquí en Iowa City.
My name is Heidi Cortez, and I live here in Iowa City.
Pues en esta hermosa tarde que Dios me ha dado
On this beautiful afternoon that God has given me,
para venirles a hablar.
I came to talk to you.
Yo soy una de las personas que soy rufera.
I am one of the people that's a roofer.
Vengo a decirles de todo corazón
I came to tell you from the bottom of my heart
que nos brinden y no nos quiten la ayuda que ustedes mismos nos han dado.
to please give us and don't take away the help that you yourselves have offered.
Que hay personas que nos quieren privatizar de esa ayuda, poniendo muchos obstáculos.
There are people who want to keep us from getting that help, putting a lot of obstacles in front of us.
Y la verdad que es una ayuda que nosotros los hispanos nos hemos ganado con esfuerzo.
And truthfully, this is a help that us Hispanics have gained through hard work.
Porque sin importar la pandemia y este hielo, hemos luchado a diario, si es posible, las 24 horas.
Because no matter the pandemic or this icy weather, we've been still fighting 24 hours.
Y creo que no es justo que pongan muchas cosas para que nosotros aprobemos ese bono.
And I don't think it's fair for you to put so many prerequisites to approve this help.
Aún sabiendo que lo necesitamos de todo corazón porque hay biles que pagar, hay renta, porque con este hielo que está, habemos muchos que no podemos trabajar.
When you know that this is a help we need, we have bills to pay, we have rent. Under this weather, there's a lot of us that can't work.
Cubrir medicamentos para nuestros niños cuando se enferman.
We have to buy medicine for our kids when they get sick.
Entonces yo en esta tarde les vengo a pedir de todo corazón que midan su corazón y pues no pongan ese obstáculo de tantas cosas que quieren poner porque no, como nosotros hispanos no vamos a poder llenar requisitos fuertes.
And I come to ask you from the bottom of my heart to please look inside your hearts and offer us this help without putting so many obstacles, because honestly, a lot of us will not be able to meet these requirements.
Yo les agradezco por haberme escuchado en esta tarde.
And I thank you for listening to me this afternoon.
Y les pido que mediten eso, de que no pongan muchas cosas porque nosotros no los podemos llenar.
And I ask you to please think about this.
Son muchos requisitos y la verdad que como muchos no queremos quedarnos afuera porque habemos muchas madres que no tenemos apoyo de nadie, solo dependemos de ese bono.
There's a lot of requirements, and just like anybody, a lot of us don't want to be out in the street. We're single mothers. We don't rely on anything else. We're waiting on this help.
Y aquí no estamos solo por mirarnos, sino que estamos luchando por algo que nos merecemos.
And we're not here just so you can look at us. We're here fighting for something we deserve.
Y nos hemos ganado de todo corazón.
And something that we've truthfully earned.
Porque hemos arriesgado mucho nuestras vidas trabajando duro para poder hacer algo.
because we've really risked our lives working hard to be able to do something.
Eso es todo de mi parte y muchas gracias y le pido de todo corazón que meriten desde adentro de sus corazones.
And that's all that I have for you. Thank you very much. And I really ask you to look inside your heart.
Que nos
and,
apoyen como hispanos y que no nos discriminen, porque aquí solo venimos a trabajar no más.
and to please support us as Hispanics and don't discriminate against us. We've come here only to work.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I see Nicholas Tyson hand still raised online. I'm going to call Nicholas if he is there, followed by Dan Cobble. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. It is the real Nicholas, so thank you. Apologies for whatever happened before. I don't know what that was about. I just wanted to second what everyone has said with regards to what really should be the Excluded Workers Fund. That's what it was originally conceptualized as. And frankly, the city should be using its $1.5 million contribution and the fact of that contribution to honestly push the county into doing what they themselves originally voted for. But more specifically, I wanted to address the sort of the general tenor of how council has addressed the public in recent months. I was actually really heartened yesterday. I was one of the people who participated in the city council listening post with Councilors Harmson and Burgess, and I want to thank them for, listening to my rambling about housing and whatnot. And it was interesting because then the following morning I read the rules changes that you all decided to, or that are still working on and may very well implement. And honestly, it was slightly heartening to hear various members of council sort of shy away from the idea of punitive measures. But Mayor, you particularly seem to have a real hard-on for this that I don't understand. And the way in which you have not only treated members of the public, but other commissioners, the way you treated the original constituency of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, its current constituency, the way you've treated people like Noah, the way you've treated people like Taylor, not me for some reason, I guess because you're frightened of me. But the thing is, you literally said in the work session, you know that individual. You are planning on targeting specific people, and you have such a fucking hard-on for punitive measures that you just can't wait to get somebody arrested. And honestly, I can't figure out why. Why? What have we done that has upset you so much? Why are you so personally irritated with us that you would want to sick the police on us? Why do you want to drag officers into that room? Hell, maybe even send cops to our houses afterwards. I don't know. What is the great offense that we committed? Upsetting you? Because to be perfectly frank, in the meetings that you all think were disrupted, there was not a single disruption. And I'm really worried about a mayor being given so much latitude who can't even properly run a meeting. You have plenty of parliamentary powers available to you. You could have ruled people not germane. You could have ruled people out of order. At no point did you do that. And so the very fact that you didn't do that meant that every single person who spoke at those meetings was both germane and in order. So I don't want that person to be making unilateral ad hoc decisions about whether or not someone gets fined, whether or not someone gets arrested, whether or not a random police officer shows up at their house simply because they decided to speak in public before you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, welcome.
Good evening, my beautiful council. First, regarding excluded workers, shame on the county ARPA team, specifically the Snakes, Ray Forsyth, and Donna Brooks, and shame on the supervisors for shafting excluded workers. There should not be a lottery system. Y'all voted to fund excluded workers, so fund them. Hold your ground, insist that the county use your funds in the manner that y'all voted for the funds to be used in. Help the people who helped you get through this pandemic. Now, I'm sorry, but based on your work session, it seems like there's a lot of gray area regarding meeting protocol, and it's really concerning because I don't even think our council right now is a worst case scenario, but I think this sets the stage down the road. If different people who are super wild with how they clamp down on dissent are in office, I think it sets the stage for Iowa City to be very much like Des Moines. And this allowed, this is y'all cramping down on folks making germane comments criticizing the city, its officials, and its employees. The city attorney says y'all welcome criticism, but not personal attacks. Under the rules proposed, there is too much executive power given to the presiding officer who can subjectively determine something to be slanderous or personal. For example, there are many aspects of my arrest this spring that felt personal, especially regarding my treatment by City Manager Jeff Fruin. He literally gave the cops a thumbs up while I was being handcuffed outside his office. Now, this is my lived experience, but it would be extremely easy for the presiding officer to say, hey, Dan's reality is slanderous, and then shut down my remarks. This kind of thing has been happening in Des Moines, where Mayor County has been ruling folks disruptive for making legitimate criticisms about him, councilors, and city staff. Please, don't let our city become Des Moines, where the mayor and city managers' goons lock up critics. On a related note, folks should be able to bring up the conduct of city employees who are not public figures. That fact seemed lost on some of y'all during the work session. To a point made by Councilor Weiner, just because lots of folks show up with similar messages doesn't mean that the city should shorten their time. Like with the Excluded Workers Fund, there are folks with lived experiences, and those experiences need to be heard out. I would just like to say, hey, y'all, let's just all sit down. Let's have a listening post or a conversation with the mayor pro tem and Councilor Weiner. And I think the city attorney and city manager probably should be there too, where we all just sit down, talk to each other, get to know each other. And I think doing that would allow us to move forward in a more informed and just move towards a better resolution to all of these issues. Because y'all are good people. I like y'all. I mean, I know y'all probably don't like me, but let's talk about this.
Thank you.
In
Thank
unity, Dan Koppel.
Thank you. Anyone else online? I don't see anyone. Anyone else in the welcome? Come forth, please.
Buenas noches, honorables autoridades del condado de Johnson.
Good night, honorable authorities of Johnson County.
Mi nombre es Kelvin y vivo en la ciudad de Iowa City.
My name is Calvin and I live in Iowa City.
Bueno, de antemano agradecido con ustedes por haber aprobado esta ayuda.
I am very thankful with all of you for approving this help.
Pero, pues, se viene con esta lucha desde hace mucho tiempo por todo este grupo que ha estado en lo que es trabajadores excluidos.
But the fight has been going on for a long time with this group that is for the excluded workers.
Y solo, pues, queriendo que se respete lo que fueron los acuerdos y que fueron puestos por ustedes mismos a la hora de que se logró esta ayuda.
And we just want the original agreement to be respected that you yourselves put in place of the original help.
Queremos nosotros como grupo, con humildad y respetuoso de las autoridades, que tengan un poco de compasión con lo que somos nosotros los inmigrantes.
We want to ask you as a group, with all due respect and with full humility, to please consider us as immigrants.
Y como habitantes de esta ciudad que aportamos mucho a lo que es la ciudad y el condado.
And as citizens to this city, we bring a lot to the city and to the county.
Que la ayuda sea equitativa para todos este grupo que ha venido luchando desde hace mucho tiempo y que a veces pues las conquistas son así, dice, pero un grupo que ha venido luchando no merece que ocurran estas cosas.
And this is a group that has been fighting for a long time. We've been trying very hard, and we don't deserve for something like this to happen.
Entonces nosotros rogamos a ustedes como autoridades, ustedes que son los que pueden y encargados de hacer prevalecer la palabra de lo que es el condado de Johnson.
So we're pleading with you, the ones in charge, to please be sure that the word of Johnson County is made.
No dejar de apoyar a este grupo de inmigrantes y a todos los que vengan llegando, porque realmente venimos a trabajar, venimos a aportar.
And we ask you not to stop supporting this group of immigrants and anybody that wants to come in, because we're here to work and we're here to add to the community.
Y como nosotros como grupo y como inmigrantes, pues nosotros queremos ser incluidos en lo que es este país y esta ciudad.
And us as immigrants, as a community, we want to be included in your community in the city.
Porque hacemos prevalecer pues con esfuerzo, con trabajo, con dinamismo, aportando lo que es monetariamente para que esta ciudad y este condado se desarrollen.
Because we're always contributing with hard work, with ourselves, with money to the city and to the development of the city.
Y queremos seguir aportando porque nos sentimos habitantes de este condado y de esta ciudad.
And we want to keep contributing because we consider ourselves a part of this city and a part of this county.
Gracias por su apoyo y esperamos seguir sintiendo el apoyo de ustedes hacia nosotros.
We thank you for your support, and we hope that you will continue to support us going forward.
Buenas noches.
Good night.
Thank you. Anyone else present want to address a topic that's not on our regular agenda? Welcome.
Empieza con tu nombre y la ciudad donde vives.
Okay. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Jacqueline.
Good.
Vivo aquí en Iowa City.
Good night. My name is Jacqueline. I live here in Iowa City.
Solamente quiero decirles que por favor no hagan esto una lotería.
I just really want to ask you to please not make this a lottery.
Muchas familias, si hacen esto como una lotería, muchas familias vamos a quedar fuera de ese programa.
If you do it in that way, a lot of families are going to be left out of this program.
Ahorita, a pesar de que supuestamente la pandemia ha pasado un poco, es una mentira. Habemos muchas personas que nos ha afectado, incluyéndome a mí. 4 veces me ha dado COVID.
Right now, even though the pandemic has passed, supposedly, it's not true. Even me personally, I've had COVID 4 times.
Y la verdad que me ha dado muy fuerte y ha sido muy duro porque soy madre soltera con 2 niños.
And honestly, it's hit me very hard. It's been very difficult. I am a single mother with 2 children.
Creo que si esto se hace como una lotería, creo que hasta yo quedaría fuera porque no cumplo con los requisitos que a lo mejor ustedes pedirían.
And if this is done like a lottery, I think even I would be excluded from it. I don't think that I would meet the prerequisites that you would be asking for.
Y creo que yo más que nadie por mí lo hablo porque estoy desesperadamente porque realmente ustedes cumplan con su palabra de darnos ese cheque de estímulo. Porque créame, no tengo trabajo, me quedé sin trabajo porque me dio el COVID y no he podido recuperarme al 100 que se diga.
And I ask you this for my own personal experience. I am without a job. I lost my job due to COVID. I haven't fully recovered to 100%.
Hasta el momento he tenido un plato en mi mesa de comida, pero hay muchas personas que no lo tienen y tienen niños y es muy difícil para ellos. Y tanto como yo como ellos esperamos este apoyo que ustedes van a brindarnos.
Up till now, I've been able to have food on my table, but there are a lot of people who have not been able to. And just like them, I am waiting and needing this help.
Por favor, solo eso les pido. No hagan esto una lotería y den el dinero lo más pronto posible. Hay muchas personas, muchas familias que lo necesitamos urgentemente.
And that's all I'm asking for. Don't make this into a lottery and give this help as soon as possible. There are a lot of families that need this urgently.
Eso es todo. Eso es todo lo que yo les pido esta noche. Gracias.
And that's all. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hola, buenas noches.
Hi, good night.
Mi nombre es Leonel Ángel.
My name is Lionel Angel.
Soy uno de los trabajadores excluidos de Iowa.
I'm one of the excluded workers of Iowa.
Vengo a decirle esta noche o tarde
I come to you this night or this afternoon
sobre los acuerdos que se quedó sobre el estímulo de meses atrás y hemos estado viniendo cada vez
to talk to you about the agreement for the help that was agreed on a few months back and that we've been coming time and time again.
cada vez que se reúnen ustedes aquí. Entonces,
We come here every time you meet.
entonces queremos que respeten esos acuerdos que se quedaron y
And we want you to respect the original agreement that was talked about.
las decisiones que ustedes hicieron sin nosotros o tiempos atrás, no sabré yo decirlo exactamente.
And these decisions that were made without us or were made a while back, I'm not sure when to tell you.
No estoy de acuerdo sobre el nombre que pusieron de trabajador excluido de Iowa a ponerle nombre impacto negativo.
I'm not in agreement with the change that you made, changing it from an excluded workers of Iowa to that negative impact.
Hoy les vengo a decir de que o pedirle de favor o como les pueden llamar
I come here tonight to ask you as a favor, or however you want to call it,
que no cambie ese nombre. Nosotros somos trabajadores excluidos de Iowa.
to please not change it. We are the excluded workers of Iowa.
Entonces, otra cosa es, no tienen por qué integrar otras organizaciones u X personas que no sean de trabajadores excluidos sobre el estímulo que se dio.
And another thing, you don't have to bring in a third party or another person into this thing that has to do only with the excluded workers.
Esta noche todos nosotros estamos aquí para pedirle que se respete eso del estímulo que se quedó meses atrás, acuerdo a todos.
Tonight, we're all here to ask you to please respect the decision that was made before.
Que esos estímulos sea para, especialmente para organización de trabajadores excluidos de Iowa.
And that the help, the stimulus be given to the excluded workers fund.
Solo les pido esto, que no cambie o que no ponga X personas que no estuvieron en nuestras reuniones o en nuestra marcha, como pueden decir.
So please don't change it and don't include other people that have not been a part of this fight and that have not been there with us the whole time.
Porque nosotros hemos estado aquí luchando.
Because we've been here fighting.
Reuniones tras reuniones con ustedes.
Meeting after meeting with you.
Para pedirles estímulos en apoyo a nosotros, a los trabajadores excluidos.
To ask for this stimulus and for this help to the excluded workers.
Otra cosa es, ustedes o no sé, se han puesto de acuerdo a ponerle una barrera.
And another thing, I don't know if you have come to the agreement to add obstacles.
Al darle ese estímulo como ponerle un juego de ajedrez o de lotería, como lo pueden llamar.
And turning this help into a game of chess or a game of a lottery, whatever you want to call it.
Para ver a quién les toca.
Just to see like who might get it.
Y saben ustedes de que no todos aquí presentes.
You know very well that not all of us, even here present,
tiene ese requisito que ustedes pedirán.
Can meet these prerequisites that you might
Porque
ask.
nuestra situación migratoria no nos permite para eso.
Because our immigration status might not allow us to.
Entonces esa tarde yo les pido de favor
So this afternoon, I really ask you as a favor
que nos den ese estímulo a nombre de trabajadores excluidos de Iowa
to please give the stimulus in the name of the
y
excluded
no poner
workers of
a
Iowa,
X personas que nunca estuvieron con nosotros
and don't add X people or persons
o
who have not been
u
involved,
organizaciones que no estuvieron de acuerdo con nosotros.
or any organization that was not helping us.
Muchísimas gracias y espero que ustedes nos respeten esa decisión que se hizo.
Thank you very much, and I hope that you respect the original decision.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address a topic that is not on our agenda? Welcome.
Hello. Hello. My name is Noah. I live in Iowa City. And what am I here to talk about? Well, first and foremost, to just second here solidarity with the excluded workers to actually have an excluded workers fund specifically for excluded workers, so the people who were excluded are not excluded once again in the program that was set up because of that exclusion. You cannot create a program that was set up to address that exclusion and then exclude the very people you were the entire reason they exist. That needs to be fixed. That needs to be addressed, settled, cleared. It's very clearly not settled right now. That's why this is the past few meetings have been like this, tumultuous, not knowing what's actually going to be going on for these people. And then obviously I'm going to address your work session nonsense. Bruce, this is a personal attack. You are a clown. I don't know why you want to arrest me so badly and others for advocating for our community. I want to know why you want to arrest me so badly. What is it? Is it the fact that I cared that my friends were left to elements in which Rachel and coming? I told you had blood on your hands when you did nothing, because you did nothing. And y'all are lucky that you don't have blood on your hands, because we got lucky that the storm did not affect our city badly. It's nothing because you did, because y'all didn't do crap. Y'all just sat there in silence and you accepted it. Because you do not see, apparently, you do not see the humanity of the houseless community. If you did see the humanity, you would do something about it. You've had 3 meetings now about procedures and how, they've been so disruptive the past meeting. People are just so disrespectful to us. The disrespect to you is because you sat on your ass while there was a derecho coming and people had no shelter and the city did nothing about that. You did nothing. You've had 0 meetings about that censor to address how to get housing for people, how to shelter people, but you've had 3 separate meetings on how we can punish people who come here to talk to you. And you think that's okay? I want to know what goes on in your heads that says, okay, my priority is meeting procedure. Gotta make sure everyone's nice and civil, but screw those people who are living on the street, who are left in elements to literally die. But your concern is that I don't come here, and I know that you don't come here. We aren't the nicest with the words we use. When our little friends are being left out there to die because the city does nothing, while the police department can drive around in their tank, they can tear gas us, they can commit more war crimes, and they get millions and millions of dollars a year over year. Yet someone comes to this meeting, demands shelter for people who need shelter, and you will have meetings and you want to arrest people who oppose that. Look into your damn hearts, have some humanity, and address that.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address a topic that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one, I'm going to close community comment. And we are on to item number 9, which is planning and zoning matters. 9A is rezoning 421 East Market Street. Councilor Burgess will recuse herself. Rezoning 421 East Market Street is an ordinance rezoning approximately 0.13 acres of property located at 421 East Market Street from commercial office to mixed use. And I'm going to open the public hearing. And I'm going to start with comments from our staff, followed by questions from council. And then I will open it up for public discussion after that. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Danielle Sisman, Development Services Coordinator with Neighborhood and Development Services. As the Mayor stated, this is a rezoning application for property located at 421 East Market Street, shown on the slide highlighted in the white boundary. It's generally located on the south side of East Market Street, across from Mercy Hospital, which is to its north, and the Mercy Clinics and parking, which are to its east. The owner has requested that the property be rezoned. The building is currently vacant. It does contain office space on the ground floor with apartment space on the second floor. The requested rezoning would allow the property owner the flexibility for renting the first floor also as residential. This shows the current zoning in two colors here. The highlighted property in black is the subject property. It's currently zoned CO, commercial office, which is the same zoning as the property to its north and east, that kind of palish color. The requested zoning is to a mixed use district, which is also adjacent to the subject property to the west in the kind of more rose pink color. Both the commercial office and mixed use zoning designations are intended to buffer and transition between uses, primarily buffering and transitioning from higher intensity commercial and office uses to residential uses. They're both the same in that way. However, the mixed use designation does allow for more residential housing types, as well as I mentioned, a ground floor residential occupancy. This table lays out a little bit of those allowed uses. It does show on the upper right the variety of housing types in the mixed use district that are absent or would not be allowed in the CO district, but for above commercial, and the bit of the flip-flop between some uses where some are allowed in one district but not in the other. Overall, this change in use is really considered by staff to be fairly minor, mostly because the uses that were be flip-flopping and not allowed under the new zoning really aren't present and would not be expected to be present on this property anyway, due to its small lot size and its location on the inside of a block. Also, what it would be giving up, which would be use for hospitals or use for clinic space for the hospitals, hasn't really materialized over time as a need in this neighborhood, and therefore removing the property from that type of use would not be a great impact. As with most rezonings or all rezonings, when we review the criteria, there are two main criteria that staff reviews. First one is consistency of the comprehensive plan. The second is compatibility with the existing neighborhood. In regards to consistency of the comprehensive plan, the subject property is designated on the future land use plan or the district plan, the central district plan for office and commercial use. The rezoning of the property to mixed use allows, like I said, some flexibility to still permit commercial use, but to expand the ability for housing. This exhibit shows the future land use plan of the central planning district, and you can see highlighted here in that blue oval the subject property, really just on the boundary between two different types of proposed future uses, a mixed use and a commercial use as well. As far as compatibility with the existing neighborhood, the mixed use zoning can be found in this neighborhood. This structure type is very common in this neighborhood. Overall, it's a very compatible change in use. The next steps, as I like to lay out for you all, includes this rezoning highlighted here. If any major exterior changes or building construction were to take place, those following steps would be handled through staff reviews of either a site plan for changes to the site or building permits for changes to the building. The applicant did hold a good neighbor meeting in December, and based on the review of the relevant criteria, staff did recommend approval of the proposed rezoning with no conditions. At its January 5th meeting, by a vote of 5-0, the Planning and Zoning Commission also concurred with staff's opinion and recommended approval with no conditions. Because there are no conditions, there's no CZAs, so that does not need to be signed. That concludes my staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If so, please come forth. If you are online, please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Welcome.
Hi, Sandra Stile. I'm representing the client on this one. Danielle pretty much said it all. So if you have any questions, just adding on to a little bit of what Danielle said, our client has also suffered or felt the effects of COVID and renting commercial space, which is apparently quite difficult right now. So that's primarily the driver behind this rezoning request. But if anybody has questions.
Thank you.
I actually have one question, sorry. It's a really simple one, and it may have already been raised. Is the client looking to sell right now, or they just want to rezone in
No.
order to be able to attract additional tenants?
He just wants to be able to attract anybody to rent it out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Anyone from the public like to address this? If you're online, please raise your hand. In person, please step to the side and there's a sign-in. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to give first consideration?
So moved, Thomas.
Second, Harmson.
Now I want to make sure, is anyone inclined not to vote in favor of P&Z? Okay, all right. Council discussion.
This seems like a relatively modest change in terms of zoning. It does seem to me that you know, one of the issues, aside from allowing residential use, is how does the existing building relate to the public right of way, and it has, I think, the qualities that I would associate with residential on the ground floor. It's elevated off the street or sidewalk elevation in a similar way to the residences to the east, and it has a similar setback from the right-of-way. So it's, I think, at least from the frontage standpoint, it has a reasonable relationship to the public right-of-way. On the west, it's bordered by a parking lot, not ideal, but the apartment building has, further to the west, has a similar relationship to that parking area. But overall, I think it makes sense to kind of open it up to other uses, and so I'll be approving this.
Hearing no other comments, roll call, please.
Burgess recusing. Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with Burgess recusal, or one recusal. We're on to item number 10, which is Iowa City Public Works material storage bins. This is a resolution approving project manual and estimate of cost for the construction of the Iowa City Public Works material storage bins project, establishing amount of bid security to accompany each bid, directing city clerk to post notice to bidders, and fixing time and place for receipt of bids. I'm going to open up the public hearing, and I'm going to invite staff, followed by any, staff, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Clow. I'm a Special Projects Administrator with the Engineering Division. I've been working on the material storage bins project for a few years now. The Iowa City Public Works facility has been looking to expand the salt storage area since 1998, when work began to develop the current Public Works site on Gilbert Street. And since there are new council members, we thought we'd step you through the development of the Public Works site pretty quickly. So in 2000, the Streets Administration Building was first constructed. After that, we hired a consultant to look at a programming and master plan in 2005. At that point, we had the salt storage building as well as these material storage bins included with the master plan. In 2009, we moved forward with the construction of the salt storage building. Originally, these bins were included in those plans, but were not part of the bid package. The warm storage building, fuel facility, and exterior washout were added in 2012 through 2015. The animal shelter was added to the site in 2015 as well. Site master planning with our current consultant occurred between 2015 and 2018. I'll go back to that. And then, as you all know, the new Public Works facility, Phase 1, was started in 2018 and was completed in 2020. So now in 2022, we're looking at finally adding these material storage bins. Future phases, as you can see on this slide, include equipment and transit, refuse, as well as some office space and vehicle storage. As a quick background, the exterior material storage that exists on site is not covered. I have it pictured there on the bottom slide, and is no longer performing as intended. The original design was included with the salt storage building in 2010. It was included in the Public Works facility, Phase 1, that was bid in 2018. They were omitted from both of these projects during value engineering efforts due to budget limitations. The current exterior storage is made up of a gravity wall system, so not typically designed for the use that we currently have it set up for. Another item to note is the DNR stormwater management guidelines require exterior storage of salt and sand to be covered. Our base bid includes 1 bay of covered storage with an alternate for a second bay. The design also includes more lighting. As you know, our crews are out there working 24/7 through ice and snowstorms. And that's one of the big things they've asked for, is more lighting to help them while they're out there working. We've also included storm sewer to address current drainage issues adjacent to the salt storage building and to get water away from this facility. The benefits of a covered storage include the prevention of material loss to rain and snow, keeps material dry and protects it from freezing. Sand and salt clumps up and makes it difficult to load and spread. And then the flexibility to carry more salt through the summer months if it's not all used in the winter. If it is used, we then have the ability to store topsoil, compost, and other materials. The estimated construction cost is $400,000. We're holding the public hearing tonight. We plan for the bid opening to occur on February 23rd with an award date on March 2nd at that council meeting. Construction would start June 6th with final completion at the end of October. Are there any questions?
None, but thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone in the public like to address this topic? If online, please raise your hand. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. And can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Weiner.
Second, Taylor.
Council discussion.
I do have one question about the calendar, actually. In the last slide, it said the bid opening would be February 23rd, and then the award would be March 1st. Can somebody walk me through, or at least define, bid opening? That seems like an incredibly short window of time, if I'm understanding what bid opening means. as, like, this is when you're putting this forward?
Right. Well, we have plans and specifications that we're approving with this motion tonight, and then plans and specs will be available to contractors tomorrow.
Okay.
And so then they'll have the next 3 weeks to look at the plans, and we'll open bids from them on February 23rd.
Okay, and so the actual then decision to make the award based, if I'm
Yes.
walking myself through it, it's also that it has to go lowest bid if I'm.
Correct.
There's not a lot to the process once the bid has come
Right.
in. Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If online, please raise your hand. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to approve, please?
Mayor, we already did
Oh,
have a motion.
we already did that. Already closed it. Okay. You, sorry. All right. I get where we are. Council discussion. Any other discussion? Any discussion?
I don't have any comments other than it was interesting to see kind of the evolution of the yard, public works facility over time.
I will say, John, that actually my response, or as I was watching that, it was like, wow, it's not merely a facility, it's almost like a mini campus. And I know that area well, and it's been really well maintained and integrated along with, things that the public likes to do and by the animal shelter. So it's kind of neat how it has evolved, but yet it's not obtrusive, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense to have that all centralized.
All right. If no other comments, roll call, please.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 11 is utility easement conveyance, Lot 37 Parkview Terrace subdivision, Iowa City, Iowa. This is a resolution authorizing the conveyance of a utility easement to Mid-American Energy Company across Lot 37 Parkview Terrace subdivision, Iowa City, Iowa. I'm going to open up the public hearing. And we'll invite Jeff.
Yeah, we don't have a staff presentation. We can certainly answer questions. This is a fairly routine item, but it does require the hearing. Essentially, we're looking at upgrading our electrical line to a lift station that we have, and this is kind of near the Lower City Park area.
All right. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If so, please come at this time and raise your hand online. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Burgess.
Second, Alter.
All right. Council discussion. Roll call, please.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 12 is CPRB expand membership. This is an ordinance amending Title 8 entitled Police Regulations, Chapter 8 entitled Community Police Review Board to increase the composition of the board from 5 members to 7 members. Could I get a motion to pass and adopt?
So moved, Taylor.
Second, Thomas.
Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If so, please raise your hand online. And if in present, please step to the podium. Online, welcome Dan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Dan Cobble, and I would just like to talk about just CPRBs and just kind of like what we know works with them and what we know doesn't work with them. Now, the point of a CPRB is basically to look at a situation that happens with police in an unbiased manner, right? So if you have somebody who's worked with police, who's a former police officer, someone who not only is a former police officer, but like worked on the same police department that they're reviewing, you can't trust that person to be unbiased. And because, I mean, it's just unfathomable because they're a part of the same culture that creates the problems that they're going to be reviewing, right? So, I mean, and not only that, but if they're from the same department, they're going to be reviewing their former friends. I mean, it's a big conflict of interest. So I think that the council needs to make sure that there are no former police officers, no people who have been with the department. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this topic? If online, please raise your hand. If you're present, please step to the podium. Seeing no one. Council discussion.
I'm glad that this is coming true now, and I do like the emphasis on the diverse membership that's talked about in there, but that's with hopes that there will be a diversity in the applicants. That's not always possible. But then in response to that recent caller, this is still just, it's not mandated that it has to be someone, a police officer. It's just suggested and may be appointed is the wording. So we have to show good cause why we wouldn't appoint someone who did apply that was perhaps some law enforcement background. But I think, on the other hand, a police perspective might be helpful to some of the members on the CPRB. But again, stress that inclusion of the police professional is not mandated.
I have a few thoughts. And when this initially came out as a recommendation from the CPRB themselves, I had some misgivings and then felt assuaged and felt that the answers were there, that had a logic to it, about having someone who sort of knows the ins and outs and can help provide some guidance about what guardrails are, as well as a different perspective, and it's one vote of many. I have to confess that it hasn't sat right with me throughout. So I realize I am in the minority here, but I just wanted to put that out, that I think that if we look back not only in terms of any kind of longevity of career or of engagement or activity, any one of us looking back in that, we do have a lot of knowledge and experience in a particular way with whether it's community engagement, our own careers, and I think ultimately it is very difficult to separate out some of those experiences with then issues that may come before you or before any of us putting ourselves in that role, to be able to separate ourselves out fully and truly, and with as few teeth as there are to a CPRB in this state right now. With all respect to my colleagues, this is something that I'm actually not okay with.
All right. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
No.
Burgess?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Item number 13 is Farmers Market Insurance. This is an ordinance amending Title 10 of the City Code entitled Use of Public Ways and Property, Chapter 11 entitled Farmers Market to require all vendors to carry insurance. This is second consideration and staff is requesting expedited action.
I move that the rule requiring that ordinances must be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended, that the second consideration and vote be waived, and that the ordinance be voted on for final passage at this time.
Second, Thomas.
Seconded by Thomas. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If so, please raise your hand. If you're online, and then if you're in person, please come to the podium. Seeing no one, council discussion. Roll call, please.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes. Motion passes 7-1. Could I get a motion to pass and adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Weiner, seconded by Alter. Any roll call, please?
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 14 is Downtown SMID Amendment. This is the ordinance amending Title III, Finance, Taxation, and Fees, Chapter 7, Iowa City Downtown Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District, Section 4 Operation Fund of the City Code to conform to the amendments in Iowa Code Chapter 386 regarding multi-residential properties. This is second consideration, and staff is requesting expedited action.
I move that the rule requiring that ordinances must be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended, that the second consideration and vote be waived, and that the ordinance be voted on for final passage at this time.
Second.
All right. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? Welcome, Dan, online.
Hello?
Hello. Welcome.
Oh, hi. I would just like to say that I think it's really important that we invest in the South District, and I think that a lot of the changes that would go along with the Schmidt are good, but I just want to be mindful of the negative effects that may happen with it along the lines of gentrification and other such things. So everybody can kind of keep their eye on that and make sure that does not happen with the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this topic? Seeing no one, council discussion. Roll call, please.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Could I get a motion to pass and adopt?
So moved, Thomas.
Second, Taylor.
Roll call, please.
Burgess?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 15, assessment schedule. Resolution adopting an assessment schedule of unpaid mowing, cleanup of property, snow removal, sidewalk repair, and stop box repair charges, and directing the city clerk to certify the same to the Johnson County Treasurer for collection in the same manner as property taxes. Could I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Burgess.
Second, Alter.
Anyone from the public would like to address this topic? If so, please step to the podium. If online, please raise your hand. Seeing no one, council discussion.
I just had a clarification question, because of course we've seen this on our agenda many times, but I'd never seen the phrase for the item refuse special pickup. I know recently I saw that persons can contact the city to pick up heavy objects like couches and things like that. Is that what that's in relation to? I just had never seen that on our list of assessment schedules before, and there were 4 of them this time. Is that?
No, I believe that that is what it's for, that, you know, they call and have that pickup, then they're billed for that.
And they
that
hadn't paid the
service.
bill.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it, but I pay my bill automatically online, so it was automatically deducted the next time, but not everyone pays their bill automatically.
Right, right.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Harmson?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weiner?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 16 is announcement of vacancies previous. Applicants must reside in Iowa City and be 18 years of age unless specific qualifications are stated. Civil Service Commission, 1 vacancy to fill a 4-year term, April 5th, 2022 through April 6th, 2026. Applications must be received by 5 p.m. February 22nd, 2022. Housing and Community Development Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Applications must be received by 5 p.m. February 8th, 2022. Airport Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Airport Zoning Commission, 1 vacancy to fill a 6-year term. Board of Appeals Building Design Professional, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Historic Preservation Commission, East College Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission's Jefferson Street, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Housing and Community Development Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Senior Center Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Vacancies will remain open until filled. We are at item number 17, which is City Council information. So any reports?
The only thing I'd say is that I know that all the precinct caucuses are this coming Monday evening, and encourage people, regardless of your political party, encourage everyone to participate.
Probably worth an additional reminder that if you are a Democrat, you'll be doing it virtually in Johnson County.
I had a couple of items. I think we didn't report on it at the last meeting, but Mayor Pro Tem and I had visited one of the South District homes that the city had purchased that is being renovated by the Women's Construction Confidence Course. I might have that name a little wrong. But it's a collaboration between Kirkwood, City of Iowa City, MMS Consultants, I believe, was supporting it. And we got to speak with the women who are participating in that course, see them in action. It was demo day, which was pretty exciting. But just hearing those who were there talking about why they were taking the course and what they were gaining from it was just really, really wonderful. So I'm grateful that we have that South District home ownership program so that we have those houses available, and thank you for that collaboration. And then the other thing was Councilor Harmson and I had the listening post last night, which was, we agreed it was fun. It was definitely fun. Really good discussion with people. I was asking Kelly, I think we had 14 folks who attended, not all there at once, but that was great turnout, I thought, for an event like that. And it was, people could come and go as they wish, but we had a lot of really excellent discussion, just very open format, kind of free flowing, and got some really good feedback from people. So Kelly gave us a form with some notes, or kind of a format for notes that we can provide to you. So we'll pull something more together, but just wanted to encourage you all to do one because it's great.
Really glad we started them up again.
Yeah, I would echo that. It was a really good experience, and it was the format for a back and forth kind of conversation. And for people that are tuning in, the listening posts have 2 council members, so we can do that because we're not, we don't have in a formal meeting, we can't do that kind of thing just off the cuff and on whatever topic you want to talk about because we're a deliberative body. And so one of the advantages of the listening posts and having 2 council members there, and only 2, is that we could do that. That was that is like the ideal format for that kind of conversational, as opposed to a business meeting such as this.
I just wanted to mention, and I missed the opportunity during our discussion of the information packets, but the minutes on the ad hoc Truth and Reconciliation Commission meeting of January 20th, it's noted that Ron Wakabayashi spoke, and it was really a moving presentation, so I would recommend anyone who hasn't seen it on the council or in the public. I thought it was a really moving and comprehensive understanding of what happened during World War II with Japanese citizens of the United States who were basically in concentration camps during the war, and the movement after that to try to come to some a concept as to how to issue reparations and reconcile with that experience. It was really very moving experience.
I would just follow up with that as well. That one of the things that was the most amazing to me was that the story itself was the teaching and the demonstration of what truth-telling is, and about how through narrative and through telling stories there were these connections made, and it was a story of struggle too, between generations, of misgivings, and the way in which he was able to tell this story really, I think, was incredibly illuminating, but also like really pedagogical, for a lack of a better way to put it. But I mean, it really showed a path forward of how, with patience and determination and a heck of a lot of work, you know, people can come together and be stronger for it. And so I felt like it was a moment where I felt like there's a path forward here, and I just echo what you were saying, John. It was really fantastic, and it was, I feel like sort of, you know, first time caller, you know, type of thing, but it was, you know, first time listening, but certainly not the last. I had one other thing, but I didn't want to step on you. I just wanted to add to what you had said.
No, that was it for me.
I was able to actually zoom into the League of Women Voters, their state legislative forum for the local officials here, and it was really interesting, a lot focused on education. The context was sort of, we've been a week in, what do you think, and what's coming up, and it was not very, there was a lot of discouragement, I think, but also a lot of determination. But one of the things that I thought might be something that we could take up, I'll say really briefly because I know we can't get into it, but I posed a question about, you know, cities in this backfill that we're feeling. And in fact, one of the legislators said, oddly, there hasn't been a whole lot heard from cities to the state about this situation. So it seems like maybe this is something that we could talk to lobbyists or whatnot about. It seems like there's an opportunity, maybe.
Any other comments? All right. We are moving on in our agenda to item number 18, which was report on items from city staff. We'll start with our city manager.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Our deputy city manager.
I don't have anything else.
Our city attorney.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
City clerk.
No, thank you.
All right, we're at item number 19. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Moved. Second.
Moved by Alter, seconded by Burgess. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.